Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Arey, and I want to talk to you about the 7th episode of The Mandalorian Season 3. All season long, we've been hearing a lot of pushback about how this season is too complicated, or how its super weird structure is alienating casual fans. A little later, I'm going to talk to two of our writers, Bevan and Colton Ogburn, to get their thoughts, but first, I want to tell you what I thought about this episode. It was awesome, but I think for a lot of viewers, maybe it wasn't quite worth the wait. Now, like I said, I pretty much love this whole season, but I am a really easy-to-please guy when it comes to Star Wars. So far, my only gripes this season are that Din and Grogu reunited on another show, and they kind of tossed away a potential storyline when Din handed the Darksaber to Bo-Katan. But you know, this is me critiquing what was not in the show instead of talking about what was in the show. And there is so much to love this season. The show has widened the scale well beyond the story of Din and Grogu, which for some people is a drawback.
No, I don't like you.
But as a Star Wars fan, look at everything we've gotten this season. Coruscant under the New Republic, space pirate ships, the Order 66 flashback, Grogu hugging an Anzellan. And in this episode, we are finally witnessing the rise of the First Order. I always hated how The Force Awakens suddenly introduced a new empire with no good explanation. This line in the opening credit just doesn't count for me. And now we're seeing the nuts and bolts of how this era between the trilogies was formed. And now we've learned that all of this is leading up to a feature film directed by Dave Filoni, culminating all these different shows. As a Star Wars fan, I am in heaven. But
what? Everyone I know has a big butt.
we have made a few videos about the blowback on this season, and I've shared some of those sentiments. The 3 cliffhangers from Season 1 were resolved pretty quickly and quietly. We had the Darksaber, Grogu's return, and the consequences for Din removing his helmet. And none of these stories were resolved in a particularly satisfying way this season. Now, there have also been rumors that the higher-ups at Lucasfilm, maybe Kathleen Kennedy, forced Jon Favreau to reunite Din and Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett. Rumor has it that he wanted to keep them apart for several episodes. Now, normally, I put zero stock in rumors because it always seems like a lot of toxic fans will just find a reason to hate Kathleen Kennedy. But in this case, the rumors kind of ring true to me. Favreau is an expert storyteller, and I don't think he would have planned for their reunion to happen so quickly. But I do believe that Disney and Lucasfilm would want to keep Grogu on the Mandalorian show for as long as possible to sell toys. This is probably why he also got his IG-12 mech suit, but I love the thing so much that I really don't care, and I'll just buy the toy.
I have done nothing wrong, ever, in my life.
I know this. And I love you.
Now, all of this reminds me a lot about what happened to the show Twin Peaks behind the scenes. David Lynch and Mark Frost created this super weird, wonderful show with this central mystery, who killed Laura Palmer. And the nation was captivated by this. There was even an SNL sketch about it. So, when fans wrote letters to the network demanding to know who the killer really was, the network forced Lynch to reveal the killer too early, which completely ruined the show and the ratings took a nosedive. So it seems like Lucasfilm might have done the same thing by rushing the reunion of Din and Grogu. But like I said, let's look at what we have instead of what we don't have. This season has had some high watermarks for the show. Heck, I didn't even mention the creepy as hell droid using Din Djarin for a Mad Max blood bag.
We take my blood bag! We take my blood bag and strap into the Lancer's Purge!
But the structure this season, the way these stories were told, has really frustrated some casual Star Wars fans. Remember, baseline, there are people who thought this was a space cowboy show with a cute puppet sidekick. A lot of really casual fans thought that Grogu was literally Baby Yoda, and didn't realize that the show takes place after Return of the Jedi. So that's the starting point for some people on this series. So you kind of need to go slow and spoon feed them some of this greater lore in a consistent way that emphasizes, what a character wants. If we understand what a character wants, then we can empathize with them. So for seasons 1 and 2, Din had very clear quests: keep Grogu safe and to return him to the Jedi. But this season, his quest was resolved in 2 episodes, and the focus kind of switched to Bo-Katan, and this is where we start getting into problems. See, I love Bo-Katan, loved her in Clone Wars, loved Katie Sackhoff in Battlestar, but I think the show could have done a better job introducing her to the general audience. Her backstory has been told to us and not shown through dialogue in another show. In the Book of Boba Fett, the armorer says,
"She once laid claim to rule Mandalore based purely on blood and the sword you now possess."
And this was all really confusing for people. We didn't understand why her people took off their helmets and why Din's people didn't, and why these people were so different from one another. But this episode had basic information that should have been presented way back when she was first introduced. For instance, we never really understood the extent to which these Mandalorian sects were divided. The Children of the Watch think Bo-Katan's group don't walk the way, but her group really looks down on Din's people.
These primitives make up their own rules for everything.
But Moff Gideon, of all people, is the one who gave us the key line that we needed to hear way back in Season 2.
Those 2 factions are sworn enemies.
That one line brings the rest of the season into such sharper focus. If we would have known about these divisions as soon as Din and Bo met, or when the armorer told him part of their history in the Book of Boba Fett, then this whole time we would have thought that these two were always on the brink of fighting. There would have been an underlying tension throughout the season.
But sometimes isn't it better to not reveal all the information early on?
Oh yeah, mysteries are totally great. You want to keep the audience guessing. But this is not a mystery to tease out for the season. This was information that kept people from fully engaging with the characters on this show. Again, I'm fine with it. I know what's going on. I got Grogu in a mech suit and an Admiral Thrawn name drop in this episode. But that analytical part of my brain just won't shut up sometimes.
Marie! Shut up!
See, every season of this show has had self-contained episodes that seem random at the time, but then they all come together in the end. But this season widened the scope of the story, and so, although self-contained stories were not always about Din and Grogu, so I think that there needed to be a more delicate balancing act. For instance, look at Andor. So like this season of The Mandalorian, Andor had several self-contained arcs, but within those arcs, we were cutting between several different characters, quite perfectly. Actually, we even did a video about how Andor used their flashbacks so well, and the Book of Boba Fett did not. So this season of The Mandalorian did this weird thing where in a single episode we would get a B plot, then an A plot, and then a B plot in the Pershing episode, or an A plot, B plot, A plot in the Foundling episode, instead of intercutting between them like in different episodes. In the Foundling episode, it worked pretty well because the story of Grogu the Foundling tied in well with the Foundlings trapped in the nest. But I think the Pershing story could have really been teased out throughout the latter half of the season to slowly widen the scope of this story. I will admit though, I mean, look, I am nitpicking. I love this episode, and I am terrified for what's going to happen to our heroes in episode 8. So the key question is, was it worth the weight of this whole season to get to this episode? But that's just what I think. I am joined here by two of the best two writers here at ScreenCrush. We have Bevan and Colton Ogburn. So Bevan, I want to ask you first, like, you heard everything I said about the season, how I think it's not very easy for like your typical casual fan to understand, and I think they could have just done a better job along the way getting the audience there. So this episode, I want to know what you thought, and if you liked it, was it worth the season that we had to get through?
Well, pun intended, this is the way I like to see my episodes in The Mandalorian work out. It was exactly what I wanted the season to be. It was very kind of Game of Thrones-like in the sense of we got to talk to each faction, we got to, build an army to go and reclaim our territory, and then there's like a hint of a betrayal. But in terms of worth the wait, I think for a Star Wars geek, it is worth the wait. For a normie, kind of to Ryan's point, I think it just depends on if they made it this far, Is this another Rings of Power circumstance where 1 and 3 didn't even, only finished it, and 2/3 did not finish out the season?
Okay, well, Victoria, though, but go back to like the rest of the season. You haven't been on the show for a while, so do you think the whole season as a whole has been well balanced and paced out well? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of episodes that could have been kind of bled together. For instance, I wrote down the episodes. Like, the Foundling felt like a filler episode to me. Like Guns for Hire is something that, I know you guys talked about that in depth, and Guns for Hire felt like that could have been tagged on to like the Spies or the Navarro episode where they kind of come down and rescue Navarro from the pirates. Like, I thought the pirates was building up, they're gonna, lay camp there, but then they don't. Like, the next episode, but wait, we're gonna take over Mandalore at that point. So I thought that was a little weird to set up that they were gonna find a new home in Navarro, but then decide to go get their home. I don't know. That was a little weird and filler-ish to me.
But in addition, we've also had some extremely cool highs. I mean, like the Grogu, Foundling, the Grogu Order 66 episode, one of the best, moments and reveals in the whole show. Like I talked about these earlier. So, Colton, how about you? Did you think this episode delivered on, a wonky season? Do you even think the season was wonky?
Well, the season didn't go the direction that I thought it would. I thought after season 2 that we were going to see Bo become essentially the antagonist. And before Boba Fett, I certainly didn't think we'd be seeing Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett. I thought that'd be kind of like a mid-season thing, or maybe like a penultimate episode. This was the penultimate episode. I thought by this time in season 3, that would be when we got Grogu. Overall, I would agree that this season, it's been a little messy, I guess you could say, maybe from like an editing perspective, or just the order in which they've put stories into different episodes. And like you made a good point that they probably should have combined a few things here and there. But scene by scene, I've enjoyed the season. I've had fun. I mean, going back to like season 1, The Mandalorian was like an old Western. It was like bottle episodes that whatever their mission was, that episode was essentially concluded by the end of the episode. So I've kind of enjoyed that. I've come to expect that with Mandalorian, and I've liked that. So no, I don't think this season has been bad. I really don't understand all of the pushback it's been getting at all. But I really enjoyed this episode. I like that this episode brought together everything from this season. Even like little things that people may not have enjoyed or complained about. It all played an essential role in this episode and getting to appreciate this episode.
We have these little teases like, oh, Gideon might be around. We've had the Pershing episode. Has all of that been too scattered? Like the Pershing episode was 2-3 episodes ago. At this point, are people still going, oh, right, so that's why, because it was so unclear what was going on in that episode for some people. They may not remember Pershing that well because he hasn't been seen for 2 years. Should the season have been restructured, Colton, in some way to maybe check in with these stories more constantly? A little bit more like Andor, where we would check in with Cyril and the ISB agents and Andor and all these other characters kind of continuously throughout the series? Or do you think that these little bottle episodes still function within the show?
Well, originally when I thought season 3 was going to be about retaking Mandalore and, Din versus Bo and all that, I didn't think that we'd be getting back into the clone stuff at all, and I'm glad we are. But that episode in season 2, it's like episode 4 when they see the Snoke-looking thing in the tank, I thought that was yet another somehow Palpatine returned. They were just like, oh, Jesus, put something in there to try to be like, oh, yeah, they were working on it. It's not as random as it seems. I thought that's all it was. So then when we got episode 3 of this season and it was Pershing, I was like, okay, they're following up on that. I like that. I like they're incorporating Grogu. And I liked that for episode 3, they at least had Mandalorian and Grogu and Bo at the beginning and end. But I do think that can be a real turnoff for a casual viewer. Like Walking Dead did that, where you wouldn't see Rick for 3 episodes, or after the whole Negan thing happened. It was 2 or 3 more episodes before you caught up with, well, how is our group reacting to what happened with Negan? And it just kind of makes you lose interest. So, no, I'm not a fan of it from an editing perspective. I think it would have been a lot better to say, okay, we've got our story. We have little things here that we want to incorporate. Instead of just being oh, well, let's go over here and talk about that. Just kind of intertwine it and just kind of cut in between. Have the different things that you want. You want that information provided to the audience, sure, but interconnect it better with your storytelling, because, people are watching it because it's The Mandalorian. They want to see Din. They want to see Grogu. And I'm all for putting all this other stuff in it and enriching the story. But yeah, I would agree that the way that they are unfolding it, and with there being nearly a season in between, but it was episode 4 and then episode 3 between the 2 clone things, that's way too long. People are like, who the hell is that guy? So yeah, I would agree. If it's going to be such a major part of the story, they definitely need to construct it better in the writing and the editing.
Bevan, do you think that this episode was a great payoff for all this? Do you think that, for your casual fans, that the season now makes sense? In what ways did this episode succeed, and in what ways, do you think maybe it should have shared the love with the rest of the season?
I think where it succeeded is it finally brought back a true baddie, a true bad guy. Moff Gideon coming back around and taking a front row to the narrative and being proactive. I think that was a big win for this episode. I think we were waiting for him to come back, and I think it intrigued me more when he came back in and he started interacting. You started to see what the Empire has been doing. I think that's been a big win. To even hear the monologue that Bo-Katan says about Mandalore, how they were so powerful that nobody on the outside could defeat them. It's only within themselves that they get destroyed. And I think that if they had focused maybe that quote around the entire season, I think that would have been very powerful, because everyone can understand interfighting. That's what House of Dragon does really well, Game of Thrones does really well. So that's why I think this episode was really strong.
Well, and the symbolism with Gideon being there, he's been there all along. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. So in that way, do you think that the show is saying that the divisions have been there all along, that the secret evil has been buried underneath the surface of Mandalore because it's within themselves? Colton?
Yeah.
You said it way better than I did, but yeah.
You know, and Bevan, to your point about, like, this was one of the first episodes of the season where I really felt for the characters in a way. I've always enjoyed the story. And there's a few moments in seasons 1 and 2, like when Grogu gets taken and, you know, when Din comes after Gideon and says, what you have means more to me than anything else in the world. Like, those moments that can really rip your heart out in this show. And I think this season, because it's been a little devoid of conflict, you know, Din got to bathe in episode 2. It's been fun, but it hasn't necessarily hit me in the feels. Bo-Katan's speech about her failure, and then when Din, like, gives her that pep talk and says,
what means more to me is honor and loyalty and character.
Incredible. Like, for me, that's the payoff of their kind of building friendship throughout this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with this season, and I'm fine with them doing what I didn't expect. I think it's a little obvious that behind the scenes they had different plans, personally. I think that's pretty obvious, but I'm happy with it, and just because they didn't do what I thought they would do, yeah, to your point, I like being surprised, especially in this job. You know, we usually speculate, and then a lot of the times, you know, we're right, and then it's like, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. So it's nice to be surprised.
To Ryan's point, Star Wars, I feel, is at its strongest when it deals with its characters and its relationships with each other, especially when it comes to family. And family was
found families, especially.
Found families, yes.
Clip.
I think the trick is, you know, with this show, especially because you guys covered this as well, that the viewership of this show has been down. So what is it that needs to happen to build up that hype? And I think as long as the season ends really strongly, people will come back for an additional season and go to see the movie.
And that's the thing about this, the ratings being down. It's still going to be on Disney Plus. There's some people who might just be waiting till the whole season is done. And frankly, I think they're going to have a better time watching it than some of the audience who's been watching it episode by episode. Because I think if you were to view this episode in one day, it would make perfect sense. Week by week, it's a little bit wonky. So, Bevan, I wanted to ask you, this rumor, and it's, as far as I know, not even backed up by like any mainstream media, but there was a podcast where this person heard a rumor that Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy clashed over this season, and that she forced, or somebody in Lucasfilm forced, the Grogu reunion to happen in Book of Boba Fett, whereas Favreau preferred to keep them apart for a few episodes this season. Do you think that holds water? Do you think that makes sense? You think there's any truth to that?
I mean, I definitely think there could be some truth to that, because I found myself thinking it was an odd choice to put basically 2 Mandalorian episodes in the Book of Boba Fett. And something behind the scenes had to have gone wrong, no matter what it would be. And there might have been pressure. I don't know if people behind the scenes actually anticipated how huge Grogu was going to be as a character, and they might have panicked and said, oh my God, we can't keep these two apart. People are going to lose their minds. Even though I thought it was a beautiful ending to have Grogu, I would have been fine with Grogu staying with Luke and make me miss him, and then bring him back when I've missed him for a long extended period of time. And then it'd be a real heightened moment. Like, you could have even had Grogu with Luke all the way up to the movie.
I was going to say, it sounds like the people in the suits decision. I mean, I have a hard time believing that the 2 guys that made season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian made the Book of Boba Fett. That has always baffled me. I mean, yeah, I guess everybody has a bad day at the office, but having essentially 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett be Mandalorian episodes, that sounds like a non-creative, strictly look at the numbers type of decision. Like, hey, this Mandalorian guy, he's really popular, and the Baby Yoda kid, yeah, put them in the Boba Fett show. Yeah. Oh, you don't want to? I don't care. Do it. That's what that decision sounds like to me. I don't know if it was Kennedy. It might have been even higher up than Kennedy. You know, somebody at Disney saying, Grogu sells a lot of toys. We want him in Boba Fett. We want him in Mandalorian 3. Get over it. It felt very shoehorned. And don't get me wrong, those Mandalorian episodes were the best episodes.
They were, Adam.
But yes, that makes so much sense to me now thinking about it that it was probably a top-down decision and kind of out of their hands.
No, I really feel like they closed out Grogu's arc so beautifully at the end of season 2 that I don't think they plan to bring him back anytime soon. And then of course he grew in popularity, and then things change.
And one thing I take comfort from, we get on here, we watch the episode, we make our Easter egg videos, we do our theory videos, we come on here, we complain about the episode like all Star Wars fans, but no Star Wars stays bad forever. It's incredible. Like, now there's all this nostalgia for the prequels, Ahmad Best, Hayden Christensen, both kind of getting their accolades right now, which is awesome. I'm even kind of hearing, like, from some people, like, casual fans loved The Rise of Skywalker. They thought it was great that Palpatine was in it. And I think eventually, maybe after these shows justify that weird creative decision, we'll like it too. Like, no Star Wars is something I can hate for very long or even dislike for very long. Even Book of Boba Fett, you're talking about it now and I'm going, I should rewatch that show. That had some good stuff in it. It had, Boba Fett riding a Rancor, and I got cyborg teenagers doing a twirl for no reason, and, Chrysanthemum was there with Jennifer Beals. I mean, come on, it wasn't all bad.
I would gladly watch Attack of the Clones with you right now. I don't like that movie, but I enjoy it. Does that make sense? There's lightsabers and Ewan McGregor, and it's fun.
The Yoda moment at the end, oh man.
Right.
So good. And there's always something about Star Wars that seems to resonate with us on a personal level, which is why I think when something doesn't resonate with people on a personal level, be Luke in Last Jedi or somehow Palpatine Returned, we tend to take it very hard, very personally. The Mandalorian, for me, this season is not that. This is just me like going back, looking at it in hindsight and going, that's kind of weird how they structured that, So I really think I'm nitpicking with a lot of my choices, with a lot of my criticisms this season. But I'm kind of also trying to be the voice of the voiceless, the people who are casual fans and don't necessarily know the history of Bo-Katan off the top of their head.
And the thing is, the numbers don't lie. Okay, this season, I guess, has lower viewership. But like you said, maybe people are waiting to binge it or something like that. But in terms of all of the negativity, I would say, the most toxic, rude people are always the loudest, and they love to bitch. And that's what they do. And you're always going to hear more of the hate than the good. That's just how it is. So I think that could be another thing with this season.
All right, so I want to get to final thoughts and predictions for the finale. Bevan, what are we going to see? What's left to see?
I really just want to see Grogu wield a lightsaber of some kind. I don't think I'm going to get it next episode. I think I eventually will. They just teased me with Yoda's lightsaber in the last season, but eventually I'd like to. I think he is going to go and rescue him, and I think that's going to be fun because Din got captured at the end, so now it's Grogu's turn to go in and guns a-blazing and get him out. So I think that will definitely be a thing that happens. I definitely think we're going to get a reveal on who the spy is, the betrayer is, and, it could be the armorer. I think that's the most popular fan theory out there. At least I think it is.
Might be Skinny Pete.
Yeah, it could be.
You don't cast Skinny Pete just to be skinny in a boat. You gotta, he could be the spy.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a spy. I think we're going to get a tease to Ahsoka, whether that be Thrawn. I think they're just going to set up for what is going to come up for the movie, what this movie is going to look like. Because I know we're winding down Din and Grogu's journey. That was announced that that story is going to get closed out with the film. And I believe that's coming up next. So,
well, sub-question then. What about the rumors that Pedro Pascal is leaving the show and maybe Din will get killed off? Because, among other things, he's not happy with the direction and he wants to take his helmet off. Could this be something that we see happen? Or does that mean the whole season's going to end with all the Mandalorians getting permission to remove their helmets? Colton, what about you? What do you think we're going to get? And do you think we're going to say bye-bye Din Djarin?
That's the first time I'm hearing that rumor, so I don't know. Maybe they beat him in with a golf club. I don't know.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah, might want to let me start over.
No, you can say that. I don't think anyone who doesn't know
Yeah,
we'll
get it.
understand that spoiler.
True.
Maybe a Beskar Golf Club.
I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. That's like a dirty joke in SpongeBob SquarePants kind of thing. The kids don't get it, but the adults do. So I think we're all good there.
All right.
That's funny.
In terms of predictions, I mean, the Mythosaur, we've got to see the Mythosaur. They've been teasing that. I think that's going to happen. I think we, like I mentioned a little earlier, I really think we may hear a Darth Maul name drop. I think that would be fun. I mean, just to kind of throw something out there, I don't know if this is going to happen, but I could maybe see Moff Gideon dying and then Thrawn show up, or maybe like through a hologram or something and like threaten Gideon, tell him he needs to get in line, or maybe Gideon escapes, but then Thrawn kills Gideon, like sends in his bombers or whatever and gets Gideon. I could see that happening, them wrapping up the Gideon story and then transitioning into Thrawn being the big bad. And I think that'd be a cool way to do it. Have the new big bad take out the other guy and kind of say, no,
Thanos and Loki.
He was bad. Here I am. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then Snoke comes
What
in at the
a
end
time
of the
to
movie.
be alive. Sorry, Bevan, go ahead.
No, I was just making a joke. Then Snoke comes in and then kills Thrawn at the end of the movie, and then Snoke is the big bad guy.
And then somehow
Always a bigger fish.
And then somehow Palpatine.
So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up right there. Colton, where can the people find you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Colton Ogburn and videos here on ScreenCrush.
And Bevan, where can the people find you?
I'm on Instagram at BevanBatSpice and not really on Twitter, but sometimes I'm here on ScreenCrush as well.
Well, none of us are on Twitter for long. So if we want to hear from you guys, what do you think about this episode? What do you think is going to happen in the next episode? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Arey.